Merhaba arkadaşlar, hepiniz IEFT Talks webinarlarına hoş geldiniz. Bugün İngiltere'nin Gözde Üniversitelerinden University of Exeter'de hukuk eğitimini Joasia ve Hayley'den dinliyor olacağız. Lütfen sorularınızı sağ alt köşede Questions bölümünden yönlendirmeyi unutmayın. Yes, Hayley, the stage is yours now.
Great, thank you. Hi everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Hayley and I work in the International Office at the University of Exeter. So presenting today, we have Professor Llb, who is going to do a mini lecture on digital influencers. If you have any questions, either about the topic of the presentation or anything about studying law at Exeter, please let us know in the chat and we will answer these at the end. Thank you. Okay, Llb, over to you.
Thank you, Hayley. Thank you for presenting me, and I will start sharing my screen maybe first so that everyone can see my slides, hopefully. Do let me know in the chat if anything is not working. So as Hayley mentioned, I'm a professor at the law school. I teach both at the undergraduate and postgraduate level, and my research is focused on consumer protection. I decided to talk to you today about digital influencers and unfair commercial practices to give you a little insight into what we teach, how we teach, but also to show you that our research is very much focused on cutting-edge issues, current issues, and we take into account what's happening on the markets, how law currently addresses certain new developments on the markets, especially related to digitalization or sustainability. And we try in our research to identify gaps in the legal frameworks. We encourage our students to help us in it or with it and try to find solutions to these gaps. So as my research is in consumer protection, one of the current developments that you may have also noted is that marketing trends have changed, and more often, instead of using celebrities for advertisements, different traders, service providers use digital influencers to reach their audiences and to market their products or services. I was then looking into these practices and trying to see whether the current protection of consumers that we have is sufficient to protect them, or whether maybe the legal frameworks that we have should change. And I actually had two research assistants helping me with this project. Last summer, one was from a postgraduate level, one was from the undergraduate level. So that's also something that we do at Exeter, that we encourage our students and give them opportunities to help us with our research. So if I talk about digital influencers, I think the first thing to mention would be to consider, why do we have this new trend? Why do we have this rise of digital influencers? There are different factors that could be attributed to driving social media marketing. The first one is that I think the trust patterns have changed. It used to be that we would trust more celebrities, or at least they would present to us this ideal that we would try to, achieve. But I think more and more, like, we see ourselves distant from the celebrities, but we see that we trust more in our peers. And digital influencers are often not celebrities. Sure, to an extent, also celebrities can become digital influencers, but often these would be just people that would create a certain following on social media due to their passion, interest, and original, often, angle on a certain topic. Because often these digital influencers are then everyday people, we more easily see ourselves as them, which can mean that we trust their messages more. In a way, it's perceived as a word of the mouth to 0 point marketing strategy, because aside, trusting in advertisements previously, we would also talk to our friends, talk to our families, and get their recommendations for different products or services. Now, our conversations with family and friends are often have often shifted, and instead we would spend a lot of time on social media and follow recommendations we find there. So that is what was one of the factors, one of the instrumental factors to create a very good platform for development of digital influencers, the rise of social media platforms. And as I've mentioned, because these digital influencers will be seen as more authentic, we will likely trust them more. Also, the fact that we see these digital influencers on our social media, that they use this specific channel of communication with us, creates a new marketing strategy. If we watch television, if we listen to a radio, we hear advertisements or we watch advertisements on these channels, but as you know, they would often be grouped, which means it will be easy to block them. You can switch the channel to a different one if you don't want to listen to advertisements. Now, there's also hidden advertisement, of course, on TV, on radio, but more specific targeted advertising is easy to block out. And that's difficult to do on social media because that advertisement there, the messages from digital influencers are intertwined with the regular content. And we call it native advertising in a way where it's very difficult to distinguish between actually regular content and content that would be seen as marketing content. So the social media is what, and the development of social media is what allowed for this influencing buzz to start becoming more prominent and led to the creation of this or rise of the digital influencer strategies. But we shouldn't forget that digital influencers, as much as we see them as trustworthy, authentic, and just regular people like us, they do this in order to earn money. They are geared towards earning certain revenue. And this is where it's becoming a little bit tricky, because if we see their practices as practices that have a commercial aim, perhaps they require specific regulation. Before I come to that, I also wanted to briefly still mention the whole idea of influence and marketing. So what do we perceive and how would we define influence and marketing? We would define it as a strategy, a practice where traders address individuals having influence over potential buyers rather than targeting potential buyers directly. So that's the difference. And in a way, influencer marketing then is type of a marketing strategy, advertising strategy. As you can see from this little graph of how many parties are involved, aside the traders and the consumers, their audiences, we also have the influencers in the middle. They are the ones who bring the message to the audience, to consumers. But as you can also see, there can be additional parties involved. There are agencies that help traders find the most suitable influencers to present their messages. And there are also platforms like social media platforms that help influencers bring their message to consumers. Now, so we have all these parties involved. Do we have already certain laws, certain frameworks in place that could regulate these practices? Generally, I would say yes. So marketing practices are regulated by in the UK at least, by the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading Regulation 2008, which is also based on the European measure, Directive Fund for Commercial Practices. So we have this framework that's supposed to protect consumers from unfair and more specifically misleading or aggressive commercial practices. As you can see on this slide, I've mentioned that in section 2 of this regulation, you can find a definition of a commercial practice that is regulated through this framework. That commercial practice would mean any act, omission, course of conduct, representation, or commercial communication, including advertising and marketing by a trader, which is directly connected with the promotion, sale, or supply of a product to or from consumers, whether occurring before, during, or after a commercial transaction, if any occurs, in relation to a product. Now, I've mentioned that if digital influencers have a commercial aim in the practices that they embark on, this could lead to them actually falling under current legislative frameworks like this one. But it's not enough to have a commercial aim. As you see from this definition, they would have to conduct a commercial practice, and they would have to qualify as a trader. So when could we perceive digital influencers to actually be traders? This is one of the sticky points currently of actually applying the frameworks that we have to practices of digital influencers. Why? Because normally they would not be presenting their own products. So one of the first questions that you would ask when you would be asking, does this regulation apply to digital influencers, would be, is the influencer's activity related to the promotion of the influencer's own product or service? And it can happen that it would be so. So by promoting certain products of other traders, influencers are actually trying to obtain more audience and more revenue from their own product, and that usually would be their channel. So it could be their blog, it could be their Twitter account, YouTube channel, Amazon page. If we can prove that link, that association, we could see digital influencers as actually being traders who promote their own products, and their own products are these channels that they use. The second way to think about it is to think whether the influencers become traders by representing other traders. So if they are acting on behalf or for, in the name of other traders, do they become the traders themselves? And recently, European Commission and European Parliament looked into this issue on the European level, and they did specify that influencers could be seen as traders if they engage in commercial activity for other traders on a frequent basis. Now, they did not specify what it means that they would do it on a frequent basis. And here you have to think that if someone has a channel for which they are promoting products or services, it's usually only part of their use of the channel. I'm sure you've seen Instagram accounts, TikTok accounts, YouTube channels where part of the content is directed at the promotion of a product or service. The other part is just keeping in touch with the audience, showing some photos, videos, sharing stories of the influencers' own lives, their experiences. It will be important to try to define what should be the percentage of the promotional activity, marketing activity versus other activity, in order to be able to have legal certainty around who we can define as a trader. This has not happened yet, either on European or UK level. Now, if we can see that the digital influencer actually regularly participates in this promotional activity, in the commercial activity, if we can define them as a trader, then we can apply the framework of the CPR 2008, so the Consumer Protection Regulation against unfair commercial practices, against the practices of digital influencers. What can we expect there? Now, these regulations, this framework, prevents traders, and maybe in this case also digital influencers, from embarking on unfair commercial practices. An unfair commercial practice is defined in Section 3, Paragraph 3, as a practice that's contrary to professional diligence, and a practice that materially distorts or is likely to materially distort economic behavior of the average consumer with regard to the product. So there are these two elements that have to be cumulatively fulfilled. The practice has to be contrary to professional diligence, and it has to materially distort transactional behavior of consumers, which means that it makes the consumer take a decision, influence their decision in a way that they would take a decision they normally would not have taken if not for that practice. So let's say you were thinking of purchasing, I don't know, a new facial cream, and you would only go for a particular facial cream due to a specific advertisement or due to a specific communication of a digital influencer. That could be seen as something that influences your decision-making. Without that practice, you would have made a different decision. You would have chosen a different brand. That could be one of these influencing factors, right? It's not that easy to prove that a practice is contrary to professional diligence, because that usually means that it would have to be against good faith, not following good codes of conduct in a particular sector, business sector. So it's much easier to actually try to prove that a practice is either misleading of the digital influencer rather than just unfair, or to even try to prove, as I mentioned here, that the practice falls under the category of one of the blacklisted practices. Schedule 1 of CPR 2008 mentions these blacklisted practices, and 2 of the categories that could be of relevance here are the following. Point 22 prevents traders, possibly digital influencers, from falsely claiming or creating the impression that the trader is not acting for purposes relating to his trade, business, craft, or profession, or falsely representing oneself as a consumer. So here you can think, if digital influencers are actually perceived as professional parties, as traders, but they present themselves on the channel just as another consumer of a particular product, in a way creating an impression that their review is maybe amateur, that their review is maybe non-professional, that their review is maybe more honest than what you can expect from a trader to do, this could lead to a breach of point 22. Point 11 further specifies that if traders use editorial content in the media to promote a product where a trader has paid for the promotion without making that clear in the content or by images or sounds, clearly identifiable by the consumer, that would also be an unfair commercial practice that's always prohibited. Here you can think about, for example, a post on Instagram where it's not made clear in it that it's an advertisement, even though it has been paid for. And I'll come back to this a bit later. Aside these blacklisted practices, we could also try to talk to digital influencers or expect from digital influencers that they don't conduct practices that are misleading. And these could be practices that are misleading either because of the action taken by the trader or by the lack of action taken by the trader. So if a digital influencer provides false information or information that's likely to deceive consumers, which will again lead them to take decisions that they otherwise would not have taken, that's a misleading action. So here you can think about traders again providing maybe some incorrect information about a product. Misleading omission means that a commercial practice omits material information, hides certain important information. So if a digital influencer in their communication forgets or on purpose does not include important information about a particular product, it could be perceived as a misleading omission. This is also where they hide the commercial intent of the communication. That also falls under the category of misleading omission. So now that we know which framework applies, how does it work in the context of UK legal framework? Now, Competition and Market Authority, CMA, in the UK investigated social media endorsements from more or less 2018 until now. These actions are still ongoing, and you can find more and more information about how this framework can be applied to digital influencers and how it can be enforced against their activities. Importantly, we've seen now evidence that their practices actually do impact consumer decision-making. There have been surveys conducted which show that, as you can see, more than 50% of respondents in a survey answered that they bought a product or service that was included in a post they have seen on social media, which suggests that there is this influence of digital influencers on our purchasing patterns and our purchasing behavior, which led CMA to more and more pay attention to the practices of digital influencers. And in January 2019, so quite recently, 16 influencers have been approached by the CMA in the UK to ask them to change the way they communicate with their audiences, because they didn't make it clear in their communication that it was indeed of a commercial nature. So, for example, Alexa Chung, Mario Falconi, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, Rita Ora, Ellie Golding, they were some of these influencers that were seen that they do not, for example, provide a clear marking that they are advertising a particular product or service on their Instagram channels or in other media. In 2019 as well, CMA and another agency, another regulator, Advertising Standards Authority, ASA, advised digital influencers to use specific labels to make sure that the commercial purpose of their communication is clearly communicated to the consumers. And these labels should then be, for example, ad, advert, advertising, advertisement feature. It's not enough, they said, if you just tag a trader in your post, because obviously tagging could occur for many different purposes. It's not enough to just say thank you to a particular brand for providing a product, because the consumer may not know that the product was provided as a payment for a particular communication. So it has to be made very clear that there is that commercial aim and that the trader has been remunerated for a particular, so that the digital influencer has been remunerated by the trader for a particular communication. And that remuneration can be monetary, but can also be in kind. So it can also be that the digital influencer receives a product that they are promoting for free, or they receive a certain discount for it, or they are receiving certain services. So for example, they will go on a trip with the trader somewhere, and so on. Another point to mention here that's quite interesting is that because these social media platforms play quite a significant role in digital influencer marketing, it's important that to look into their obligations towards consumers and whether they shouldn't have some responsibility to make sure that these practices are fair. And here, recently, we've started to see that these platforms are taking on some commitments. So, for example, Facebook committed to, well, now Meta committed to do more to prevent hidden advertising on Instagram. And they are developing specific algorithms that will allow to recognize when a particular product is being promoted, and they prompt influencers to actually identify their communication as commercial. Without that identification, these posts will not be visible soon anymore. Now, I have a bit of a question to the audience now. If you type in www.menti.com on your computers or on your smartphones and type in the code that I provide on the bottom of this page, so 37640363, you can go to a question that I have to you, and it relates to this slide that you see on the screen. So the slide you see is an Instagram post of Kim Kardashian, who's one of the digital influencers like globally. And it's a post from a few years ago when she was pregnant. And she has, in this post, in a way recommended a medicine to consumers. So if you read through the post, it says, "Oh my God, have you heard about this? As you guys know, my morning sickness has been pretty bad. I tried changing things about my lifestyle, like my diet, but nothing helped. So I talked to my doctor. He prescribed me Dicleges. I feel a lot better, and most importantly, it's been studied and there was no increased risk to the baby. I'm so excited and happy with my result that I'm partnering with Duchesne USA to raise awareness about treating morning sickness. If you have morning sickness, be safe and sure to ask your doctor about the pill with the pregnant woman on it and find out more at these specific websites. So that's the post. Now, if you look at this post, what would be your first reaction to it? And that's my first question to you about it. Would you think that this post is fair? Do you think it could be misleading? Do you think it could be aggressive? So that's the first question that you have on the first slide. After you answer this question, you can click to the next slide and maybe provide me with some information. So this is just to show you that if we would be teaching or discussing topics with our students at Exeter, of course, I would present certain frameworks and we would be discussing these frameworks, but I would also want students to engage and on the basis of like specific examples, discuss with me whether particular practices, like how we apply these frameworks to practice and whether particular practices could then be seen as potentially unfair. So I'll try to show you, hopefully you are replying to my question. Not yet. So if you go to www.menti.com and you type in this code, you can start replying to these questions that I posed. So do you think this post is misleading, aggressive, fair? Do you have any insights on that? Let's try to, I'll give you like a minute or two to maybe go to that website and engage with me for this. And you can do it, as I've mentioned, on your smartphones, on your laptops. Anything here is possible. Okay, so we have like 1% so far engaging. I'll give it a few more minutes. 2 people think that maybe this post is misleading. So think about it. How do you think about this advertisement that I showed you of Kim Kardashian and that medicine? How would you define it? And then also, why do you think if it's misleading, why would you think it's misleading? Okay, so we have 3 people voting misleading so far. Any ideas why do you think it's misleading? Okay, that she's chasing money, that it's elusive, that maybe it's fake or deceptive. Okay. Yeah, so that could be some of the answers that you have. Why? And I mean, there are like, you know, it's really interesting to consider this. Like if you look at a particular post, first of all, do you see that there is a commercial intent? On this post, what she mentioned was that she's partnering with a certain company. So you could see it, okay, if she's partnering, maybe that's enough to see that there is a commercial intent. And obviously, if she's partnering, you could expect that she's remunerated somehow for that partnership, right? So if you actually pay attention to it and you start thinking about it, you could potentially see that there is a commercial purpose to her communication. However, if you just are scoping, like, you know, browsing through your posts on social media, you may just notice, oh, Kim Kardashian, she says that she suffers from a morning sickness. Maybe she's just mentioning a medicine that helped her without like any other aim behind it. It kind of depends also like how what is whether you're very how would I say it, cynical about these things, right? Now, Another thing where you could think it's misleading is because she talks about her own experience, and she does link to the website where you can read more about this medicine. But think about it, it's a medicine. To promote a medicine, you actually have to usually be quite precise and quite specific as to side effects of that medicine, as to how you take this medicine. And in this post, she says, you know, talk to your doctor about it, but is it enough? Should she not actually mention what could be the side effects and that maybe this medicine is not good for everyone? These are some of the questions that were asked here, and actually it was seen that this specific post was a misleading omission because she hasn't provided enough information to her audience about this product. And as a result, the trader, so the Duchesne USA, that company that produces this medicine, was fined and was asked to take this communication, or impact her to take this communication down. So this is to show you that there can be very practical applications of the legal framework, and more practices of digital influencers currently are being looked into, because it's also seen that they can have potentially quite significant harmful effects on consumers. Now, this was my presentation regarding digital influencers. There's way more to talk about digital influencers, but considering the time, I'll finish here, and I'll briefly now tell you what you can expect if you're thinking about studying at University of Exeter Law School. Now, University of Exeter is actually located in two places. We have a campus in Devon, in Exeter itself, in the city centre, and we also have a campus in Penryn, in Cornwall. So you see the E for Exeter, C for Cornwall. These are where our campuses are located, and you can see on the big map of UK that we are located in the southwest of the United Kingdom, in the southwest of England, which is a beautiful part of the country, very green, very peaceful, close to the coast, so close to the seaside. We have over 25,000 students across all our campuses, and we have students who are very international from 140 different countries from outside the UK studying with us. These are some of the pictures from the two campuses. So on the left-hand side, you can see the picture from Exeter. This is one of the central focal points of the campus where undergraduate students would have all their core lectures with us, because there's a big lecture hall in this building. On the right-hand side, you can see the Cornwall campus. Now, what are the key points about Exeter when you come here that you should know and that you should remember about the University of Exeter Law School? Firstly, we have fantastic researchers at the law school, where, as I've mentioned, we look into the very current cutting-edge issues, and we conduct research on them, whether it's in the area of my own, so commercial law, consumer protection, or international human rights, family law, legal history, environmental law. I have brilliant colleagues in many different areas, and you can find news about our most recent research on our website. We focus on the practical application of the law, and we encourage our students to do that as well. This means that we, as I've just presented, we look to inform policymakers, but that also means that we don't limit ourselves to conducting legal research. We often conduct research that's interdisciplinary. And for example, in consumer protection, I would look into insights from consumer behavior science as well as from legal science. We ask our students, or encourage our students, to participate in various mooting competitions, negotiation, mediation competitions, in order so that the students also think about practical application of the law and develop skills to do so in the future. We have very high involvement with our community through different pro bono opportunities. So we offer modules to students where you can, both on the undergraduate and postgraduate level, you can actually sign up for a module, like a clinical module, where you would be providing advice under supervision. And for example, drafting legal documents or conducting research to help someone with their specific case. But we also have a lot of pro bono opportunities that we encourage students to participate in. And you can be busy in an immigration clinic or in a clinic where you're drafting wills. Wills for first respondents or colleagues from the law school. Or you can be providing advice to other students on their rental contracts, for example. These are just some of our pro bono opportunities. You can also go shadow a judge or work in the Devon County Council. We are recognized for our community involvement by the Attorney General that happened in 2019. Within these pro bono opportunities, our students also provide policy reports last year to the UN on the sustainability and climate emergency in the southwest of England. We are very a tight community, which means that we encourage our students to be in regular contact with us. All our students are assigned academic tutors. Postgraduate students are also joining our research communities. So you will be able to join one of our research centers and participate in their events. We are recognized as top 150 law schools in the Times Higher Education ranking, and we have excellent graduate outcomes. As you can see, almost 90% of our law students is in graduate level employment 15 months after graduation. The programs that we run are as follows. On the undergraduate level, we have the standard 3-year undergraduate LLB, but we also offer students an opportunity to extend that undergraduate program by an additional year. They can either then choose to go abroad, whether to European partners or to international partners, or to have professional or legal placement, which means that for a year you would be gaining practical experience and then coming back to finalize your legal studies with us. We also have 2 programs that we run with our international partners. One is an LLB Matrice in Droit. If you're fluent in French, I would recommend for you to consider this program, as you will be able to gain knowledge to qualify as a lawyer both in England and in France. If you follow this program, you spend 3 years at Exeter. From year 1, you study certain French law modules in French language, and in your 4th year, you go to our partner University of Rennes, and you finalize your program there, following their postgraduate modules. The second partner program that we have is a dual LLB JD degree with the Chinese University of Hong Kong, where students spend 2 years at Exeter on our LLB program, and then they go to Hong Kong to follow 2 years of the JD program at Hong Kong. And again, this allows students to then qualify potentially or look to qualifying in England and in Hong Kong both. We also have a graduate LLB program, which is a 2-year conversion program for students who have done their undergraduate in other areas than law, and then they would want to study more intensively, but obtain the legal undergraduate degree in 2 years. In Penryn in Cornwall, we offer a specific LLB program, LLB Law with Business. It's a 3-year program where students are encouraged to take some modules from the business school, and where the cohort consists of both law and business school students, which means there's more interdisciplinary discussions in the classroom from the very beginning. And it's also a campus where we have a very strong specialty in environmental law, as well as a newly funded research center in environmental law. Our postgraduate programs are as follows. We have an LLM Commercial Law, LLM International Law, LLM Master of Laws. The last one, the General LLM Master of Laws, allows students to choose freely modules from both commercial law and international law pathways. So if you haven't yet decided which career is most suited for you, or if you're interested in many different areas of law, that would be the best LLM for you. If you know that you want to be in practice, in legal practice, work in a law firm, or in arbitration, or in set up your own business, or be a legal advisor for a business, then LLM commercial law is probably best for you. And you can also apply for this LLM if you've, for example, done an undergraduate degree for administration or economics, but you've had some legal modules, or you've had legal experience in practice. LLM international law is more suited for students from interested in diplomacy, in public international law, in career in NGOs or government. And there you would study law of cyber operations, modern forms of warfare, human rights, while in LLM commercial law you would study, for example, intellectual property, competition law, mergers and acquisitions, AI and law. So I think this is like a brief introduction to our programs. And of course, I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much for that, Joasha. We have had a few questions in, so I will just read those out, and then, yeah, if you could answer them, that would be great. So the first question is from Ada, and they ask, is it hard to study law at Exeter for a foreign student?
I would not think so. Obviously, what we expect foreign students, to be able to do is to be able to write in English and to communicate with us. So English language is very important. I'm not English myself, so I'm a foreigner. We have a very international staff and student community, and our international students, just like our home students, can be excellent and can very much benefit from all the opportunities we provide them with. We do offer study skills support to students. There is also opportunities to benefit from like additional English, legal English study skills sessions at the INTO Institute that we have, or to take some pre-sessional training courses there if you're worried about it. Now that's like from the academic side. From just living as a foreigner in Exeter, it's a very friendly town, very open to foreigners, I would say, as one myself. And Southwest generally is very hospitable. So I wouldn't say it's difficult to be a foreigner at Exeter.
Great, thank you. So the next question is, what would be the advantages of graduating from your class? So I guess what would be the advantages of graduating with a law degree? Right, so if you graduate with a law degree, and I guess it also differs a bit whether it's an undergrad or postgraduate degree, in either case, whether you come to us to study for your undergrad or postgrad, it prepares you better to then think about obtaining legal qualifications and joining legal practice. So I think still the majority of our students, when they come to study with us, they come to study with an intention that they will, in the future, work in one of the big law firms, right? We prepare students for that by teaching them not just about the law, not just asking them to, develop legal terminology and develop legal thinking, critical thinking, but mainly to also develop these legal reasoning skills. I think that's the main point. As laws can change, therefore, knowing black letter law is not sufficient to actually allow you to be successful as a lawyer. It's much more important to be able to develop legal skills. So to be able to find an issue, be able to analyze it critically, provide recommendations or solutions, draw conclusions, apply certain legal frameworks, legal provisions to facts. So that is what we train our students to do, and that is what we practice with them, whether in undergraduate or postgraduate modules. The next couple of questions are about the LLM. I think you might have covered some of this in the presentation, but the questions are, can I apply for the LLM if I don't have a law degree? And how long does it take to complete the program?
So LLM LLM program is 1 year long. So it's just 1 year. You can apply for it if you don't have a law degree for your undergraduate studies, but you have to have had some law modules, or alternatively, in your application, you can highlight that you have practical experience with law. So if you've practiced law, worked in a law firm, worked in courts as a judge, even though or as an arbitrator, for example, even though you don't have a legal undergraduate degree, you can compensate for that with your practical experience. As I've mentioned, for LLM commercial law, we would accept students with an undergraduate degree, for example, in administration or business, where they've had some law modules. For LLM international law, students who've studied politics, for example, or international relations, but also have had some law modules in their undergraduate study, could also apply.
Brilliant. Okay, so the next question is from Layla, and she asks, how can international students develop their academic mobility, and how many countries are represented? So I guess that's how many different nationalities are on the law degree, maybe?
I've mentioned that on the campus we have a lot of different nationalities. I won't be able to like name a particular number. I can tell you that in the LLM module, for example, that I'm teaching this year, consumer protection, I have in this year students from Italy, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, England, where else? China, Hong Kong, so a lot of different places. And these are just some examples, right? So the cohort is quite international. I also can tell you that within the group of students that I have in my module, there are not just law students, there are also students from the business school. So again, you can expect, if you come to study LLM with us, that you may have very mixed cohorts.
Okay, so the final questions at the moment is from Adnan. Firstly, he says, thanks very much for the presentation. I am planning to be studying public international law and diplomacy studies. Are there chances to apply these programs to study LLM international law either in September 22 until April or May 2022?
Yes, so the application process for the next year is still open, so you could still apply to start with us in September 2022. LLM International Law is one of these programs that are still open. Just for information, we also have January intake. So we also allow students to apply for January 2023.
Brilliant. Okay, great. Well, there's no other questions at the moment, so I guess we'll leave it there. If anyone does think of any other questions or has anything else they'd like to ask after the presentation, you can email the university directly, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But thanks very much, Joasha, and thanks everyone for listening. Hope you found it useful. Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much for the great presentation. It was a great session with you again, and you covered all of the questions. Thank you for your answers too. Also, I would like to thank the participants in Turkish as well. Katıldığınız için teşekkür ederiz arkadaşlar. Umarım sizin için de faydalı bir webinar olmuştur. Exeter ile ilgili diğer sorularınız için Joyce'nin paylaşmış olduğu mail adresinden ulaşabilirsiniz. Bir sonraki webinarlarımızda görüşmek üzere. Thank you very much again, you guys. It was a pleasure to have you in IEFT Talks.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.